What up, though, Detroit? Hello, world, and welcome to another episode of Detroit ByCycle, where we are all about the love, benefits, art, culture, food, and the people we meet on bikes in Detroit and beyond. Well, today we are broadcasting at a new location.
It's exciting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bruno, welcome.
Hey, what's going on, Henry?
How are you?
I'm real good, man. How you doing?
Great.
Great.
Living the dream.
It's summer in Detroit. We're on these bikes.
It is. So, yes, we are at a new location recording today with the blessings of our boy, Ben.
Right, Ben Kehoe here at
Bikes and Coffee.
Right.
1521 Putnam. Be sure to grab a cold brew or hot brew. Get your bike worked on.
Come down here and get some brunch.
Get some brunch.
Get your bike worked on while you're eating some brunch. Saturday and Sunday.
Nice. Thanks again, Ben, for allowing us to hang out here with you.
Hey, thanks, Ben.
So, on today's show, legend, I just have to say right off, first thing that comes to mind is absolute Detroit legend. This woman has been doing many good things for Detroit, let alone supporting them for many, many years. Just to give you a little insight, this woman, our special guest, has been a promoter, a verbal, loud promoter of Detroit before the Renaissance building was built. This woman is the incomparable Miss Emily T. Gale.
Here, here.
Hey, how you doing, Emily?
Thank you so much,
Thank
Henry.
you so much.
Yeah, decades.
Bruno, great
Decades of shouting.
Right, there's listeners who weren't even alive.
Right, not even thought of. No.
There's some merit to just getting a little older all the time because
Right.
you have a generation after generation that
Absolutely.
support what you're doing, so it's wonderful.
So, just to give a quick, just scratch on the surface background for those who don't know anything about Emily. She's born and raised in the city of Detroit. Been a, I'm sorry.
Actually, born and raised
Gross
River.
Gross Hill.
Grosse Hill.
Yeah, she's from the island.
My father, deep Detroit roots.
Yes, I
Played
was wondering-
piano at Cliff Bell's in the 30s, you know,
Awesome.
one of those families that
Yeah.
took their family to the suburbs, but he would drive us into Detroit. So I feel like I was raised in Detroit, but lived somewhere else.
Okay,
Right.
understood. And but you're still of the Detroit people because your father owned a store in the city, and you were working with him growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So early on, you gained an appreciation for the local people of the city of Detroit, even allowing you to become an entrepreneur on your own, having multiple stores around the city, in downtown, and becoming more famous with your slogan that you started several years ago in the mid to early 70s.
Right.
And that would be say nice things about Detroit. Real quick, can we start there?
Sure.
And you can share to our listeners that saying, where it got started, and how it's blown up to where it is right now.
I always like to call it a message and a movement because it wasn't like we sat down and said, oh, let's have a slogan and put it on T-shirts, because all we were doing at the time was like using that phrase initially. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea was like, wow, we loved it in the city, and why couldn't we get more people to come downtown? We would just share our own stories about what we loved about being downtown, which is really what Say Nice Things About Detroit is.
Exactly.
Share
Right,
your own
the joy.
stories.
Share the joy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it was actually the first time we ever really put it out there publicly. We had been down in Florida, and I think it was in January or something. You see all kinds of people from Detroit, and the thing was like, oh, aren't you glad you're out of Detroit? And we were like, hey, wait a minute, what's that all about? So we thought, gee, Easter weekend, everybody from Michigan is down in Detroit, or everybody from Detroit is around there, or down in Florida. Mm-hmm. So we hired a banner, In those days, it was a lot easier to do these things. And we had the banner fly from Fort Lauderdale to Miami over Easter weekend. And the banner said, "Hi, Detroiters, enjoy Florida. Say nice things about Detroit, Emily."
Nice.
And we had a friend with UPI. We, make sure somebody got the photograph, and then it went out across the UPI. The Detroit News ran it on the back page. I mean, we knew somebody would pick it up in some way. And that really, the kind of reaction we got from Detroiters about that, in terms of it just embraced what so many people felt. We always were like, we're not going to try to convince people who don't want to come down into the city to come. We want it to, our store, Emily's across the street, which was at the corner of Congress and Shelby at that time. All the brokerage firms and banks had moved over to the RenCen when they opened. Okay. So those were all empty storefronts. So I picked up an old DuPont brokerage firm for, a decent rent. Thought, I'll do what I've been doing in my other two stores. One was in the Penobscot building, just a 9x12 room, not much bigger than where the four of us are sitting. Nice. The other one was Emily's 2 in the First National building, and just a little bit larger. But I had a chance, Emily's across the street from those. But I got to be on a corner where I was independent and visible, street level, and that was what excited me. And also the fact that everybody had moved to the RenCen, what could we do with this area to keep it going? Well, we found out it was a lot harder than I thought, so we were like many small entrepreneurs. When people ask me, what do you think about what's going on in Detroit? I say, I think it's fantastic, but remember, all that glitters is not gold for everybody. There's a lot of small business people really working hard to try to keep their doors open. Yeah. It's always difficult. Yeah. And we were in that vein, so that was I say it was a survival tactic that the community embraced. Sure. And there was the people that made it work.
And it was a time of Detroit where the national news was just very negative, and no one really had any care for the people of Detroit, let alone, saw any value in that.
We were murder capital of the world. That was what everybody was saying.
And the scars of the uprising. Yeah. Those were still very, very, very fresh and sore in the city at the time.
So we just, it was like every day we'd wake up, we were always changing the kind of the store it was going to be. I originally started, it was sort of a crate and barrel, and I thought, if I have expensive stuff, I won't have to have as many customers. Well, that didn't work, And then came up, we had the first Detroit T-shirt, and we gave it away with like a $10 or $20 purchase, or somebody made the joke in the press, like she had to give it away. Who would ever buy a Detroit T-shirt? But I eventually took all the store items. I had wine glasses and really, upscale stuff, and I started putting more and more Detroit things in because we found people were really drawn to it. And, from yo-yos to bumper stickers, and pretty soon the whole store was everything you could ever think of with Detroit on it in some fashion. And that spirit. And then we, created our first Emily Detroit run with about 90 runners that grew to thousands and thousands.
83?
75.
75.
Actually, the first one.
The first one. Right,
okay. Nobody had ever had a run in the streets of Detroit. I went up to a radio station in town.
Yes, the first.
Yep.
Actual organized.
Exactly. Because the police said they heard me promoting it on the radio station when I got back to the store. Chief Bannon, or he was the assistant chief, had a car waiting for me, and they took me up there and you can't just promote you're having a run. You need to go out to Belle Isle. I started crying. And it was like, I don't want to be on Belle Isle. The whole idea, I had just become a runner. Pooh and I were runners, and just the joy of running through the city streets and stopping and shooting hoops with somebody playing in the street. That whole street action. My thing was like, the streets are the greatest recreational asset we have. We need to be using them. Sure. And to his credit, with shedding a few tears and trying to really explain to Jim Bannon what we were trying to do, it wasn't about just having a run. This was about taking people through a guided tour of downtown. We'd take them through Greektown. We'd take them down where the Soup Kitchen Saloon is, down where Riverwalk is now, by the Woodbridge Tavern, Rhinoceros. Those are all parts of different businesses that were aid stations.
This was around the time period where there was a lot of flight. Nobody was staying around in the city. No one thought anything was going on in the city, and you were a huge spark to help maintain that and get people back down and show them.
Where some of our greatest support came from was the suburbs. we would go down to runs, like other runs, and hand out flyers, because in those days it's before internet. And we'd print like 300,000 flyers, right? Because people think you want 100 runners, you print 100 flyers, right? No, it doesn't work that way. But we'd go down to places, and it might be in Allen Park, and we'd be handing out flyers, and somebody would be walking around. You don't want to go in Detroit, they'll steal your car. But there were enough people downriver, enough people north, whose families grew up in the city. Sure. You know, they have history, they have legacy, they have people wanted to feel good about it, is what we found. And so often the kids would be coming down and running the runs. They'd say, oh, my parents would be so upset if they knew I was down here. Then maybe a run or two later, they'd have their parents back down.
With them, right?
Yeah, and the running was an equalizer. We had judges, we had cab drivers. It really, when people have running clothes, you don't have that hierarchy.
Sure.
And then when you have dancing in the street, you really break down the barriers. Yeah, the parties were legendary.
Can we focus on some of that a little bit? Because I've heard a lot of stories about the after parties. They were epic.
They were pretty
people
epic.
Would come just for the party.
Yes, and I always say to people, you know, when they say I ran in your run, I said, I hope you stay, because I hear it. Anywhere I walk, people come up to me and say, oh, I ran in your run many years ago. I still have my T-shirt. We had awards. I was sharing with Colleen earlier that Midas was our sponsor for a long time. Okay. So we had big mufflers were the trophies, and then on top, you know, the figure, and really nice trophies. But we didn't give them away when the run was over. You came into the store on the Monday to get your awards. Okay. We closed the store on the Saturday. The whole idea was not like to have Emily's across the street be busy. It was to get people to come downtown and see all the different businesses downtown. Once you get people down there and they get familiar,
so they could come back again and again and again.
Familiarity, and you know. So the whole thing was to get people to party. Awards. You know what? If you think they're important, then you can come back on Monday and get your award. Right. What I think is important is that you enjoy being in the streets of Detroit.
Right, and you talk to the people that are not like you and conversate with people that are from a different part of the city.
You know, street breakdancing had just come out. I had, you know, we really integrated a lot of the Afro-American community because that was really who our clientele was a lot at the store. And I had friends that were young kids that did breakdancing, and the first time we brought them out, people were just blown away by that. So it was very, very urban. Let me put it that way. And I loved dancing. We would drop, for instance, for the aid stations, we would drop lines down from the phone company. So let's say Brian McDonald out at the soup kitchen, who was the owner out there, he would hear everything I was saying on a wireless down at the start and finish line, because we had it amplified out at every aid station. They could hear the music. We would choreograph the music. Yeah, the guy I did the music with, we had certain theme songs every year. One year it was Betty Davis Eyes. Another year it was Jump. That was a really good one. Is that whoever just did Jump? Van Halen. Yeah. And everybody would get down real low and jump, and we were the first to have wheelchair participants. We called it the Ironsides division because they weren't allowed in most races. And we'd have 35 wheelchair participants, and they would lead the conga lines through the streets. And then we did it on Washington Boulevard, which was a wide street. And the police, when we started putting the runs there, because they were getting larger and larger. And I've got videotape that I've had digitized recently. For 20 years I stored it in a locker, you know, and it's all 3/4 inch. Finally found someone who could digitize that. And when you see the stuff and the dancing, and so I'm working on making some documentaries or some movie shorts with that. Okay. But the joy and the dancing was so exciting because nobody tried to curtail it. Once the police got into what we were trying to do and the joy of it, they used to say the worst thing that happened would be a case of blisters. Sure. So that's the part that is so joyful to me, is the being able to dance and get people on having the wireless sound is everything, right? And the trolley car came then, and the police were like, how are you going to make, you can't do it on Washington Boulevard, the trolley's got to go through. I said, please, trust me, we'll figure it out. And then we told them, we're going to give everybody a little trolley whistle, which we did. And the guys, after a few years, the police trusted that if I said we were going to be able to make something work with your support, because we always needed their support, and they gave it to us. So sure enough, when we'd hear the trolley, everybody would toot their little horns, and thousands of people would move away from the tracks, and then a bit more into the street. Man,
so this it brings up so many avenues I want to address with you. But first, I do want to bring back a fond memory I have. I remember footage, news interviews and such, that you commuted to work often on your bike, correct?
Yeah, I rode our bike all the time into work. We had a tandem, and Pooh and I would ride in the tandem, and then we had the great big penny farthing.
I remember the penny farthing up front you used to keep up.
Yep.
So that's one thing that really sticks.
We gave bike tours, too, on Saturdays. And do you know who gave them with me? Colin Hubble.
Oh, wow.
Colin worked with me in those days. He was like an 18-year-old, and we had bike days too. I have a picture of Howard Stern helping me put because he worked at W4 Radio, and he and I. It's actually video. I found it as I've looked through things over the last 6 months and stuff, and he's helping me put the letters up promoting our bike day up on the W4 billboard. Remember that on East Jefferson Avenue? So a lot of that history.
First, I mean, which is very inspiring. And on my second thought would be hearing how you kind of did things your way, all with gathering people and showing them the city and enjoying camaraderie afterwards. I mean, that's the blueprint of what was boomed here locally about 10 years ago almost. That's slow roll for you right there.
Which is why I fell in love with you guys when I met you.
Right.
Because
it has many of the same qualities, the purpose, the ask for forgiveness, not permission. And
that's the biggest one. There you go.
That's the way it goes, and then being embraced by the police.
Exactly.
And now we're partners to the point where if the police come to us and they say, hey, we need you to clear this street, you need to get your people off this street or whatever, they just know that we're going to make that happen, and we're going to keep our people safe. And it's just amazing to sit here, literally to hear the parallels.
And the thing about it is, what I love is it's the past meets the present. I mean, we all have somebody that was paved the way before us.
We stand on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly. Right. And when the first time I came to Slow Roll and could feel it and feel the Detroit love, I call it, that all of you had
it's
individually.
Special. It's Detroit
special.
Love. It's not. You don't get it everywhere.
And you just, you were like, oh my God, this is incredible. I was just blown away, and I continue to be, even though I'm not at a lot of the rides. In my heart and my spirit, is what you're doing all the time. That's what's so wonderful. When you do something and other people are picking up on it and taking it to the next level and raising the par.
Yeah, and I know that we feel the responsibility for that way too, as well as host to the city of Detroit. We take that job very seriously because we know people before us did as well.
And what I love is that, when you've been through it, you can have so much respect. Watching how you all, it's hard to maintain something.
It is.
It's one thing to create it, but the way that you have been able to maintain everything that you're doing and the spirit in which you do it, people have no idea how hard it is.
Difficult.
Well, and volunteers.
Yeah.
It's more than
I
just
watch you guys. I tell everybody, when you go to a slow roll or you go to a golf tournament, watch behind the scenes. There's so much more going on than you can even imagine. I mean, first time I saw people, covering the intersections and everything, I was like, this is way beyond what we did. I think what you've done is way beyond. We get a lot of acclaim for what we did because it was pretty advanced in those days. But you've taken it to a whole new level, which is so wonderful when people realize that the possibilities are endless. They're only as limited as somebody's imagination. And you have not been limited in what you're doing. And that's why I love watching it. I feel like, okay, I played a little part in that, but I also can be part of what they're doing.
A participant as
well. And I don't have to be organizing it. I can go and get all the Detroit
ride. Wave.
Speaking of organizing, I mean, just to backtrack a little bit on more of your history that I was fascinated by, is that with your local promotions and your local organization and putting things together practically on your own, you and your husband, you got noticed when you went for your first Ironman, and you were actually one of the first women to run an Ironman, and that led into a relationship which got you into promoting and setting up and doing all of those things by that sanction as well.
In fact, they used to come and spend a week at our races because we were all new. Valerie, who owned the Ironman, was a pioneer. She didn't know anything about putting on an Ironman. She owned a Nautilus Fitness Center. and they put the first $500 into Ironman. You know, when John Collins had the first event, which was 13 people, right? And when Valerie and her husband got divorced, she got the Ironman. Her husband got the Nautilus Fitness Center, and she was like really deferred to Herb and I. How do you do this? Because when we went and did the Ironman, we did it as a promotion. We read about it in Sports Illustrated, and our minds were like, okay, how can we say nice things about Detroit out there more? Well, we'll train for this. Wow. We wore the shirts. I was on ABC Wide World of Sports. We got ourselves into that. So everything was about that. And then we had a contest in Detroit. Whoever could guess my finishing time won an all-expense-paid trip to Hawaii the next year to work in the press room in the Ironman. Wow. And you know, drive a Ford car. People thought we shipped it over. No, we just got it from a local Ford dealer, you know, because the Ford dealers of Detroit were one of our sponsors. So we were always pretty creative about how to link it in and take it to that next level. At the Honolulu Marathon, we always had a Ford parked outside the Hyatt with a big decal. Emily Detroit won June 16th, you know, 1983. Right. People thought we shipped that car over because people weren't into that kind of promoting at the time. Right. So that all of that, taking it to that next level, was what we were always looking for. And I always used to say, wherever you live, work, or play, if Detroit is in your heart and you have nice things to say, as far as I'm concerned, you're a Detroiter. You don't have to me, live in the city of Detroit to be a Detroiter. You can love the city, and that makes you a Detroiter. And that was an advantage to us because it wasn't like territorial. Sure. If it's in your heart,
it was inclusive, not exclusive. You weren't creating walls,
right?
You know,
that's fascinating. Another avenue of firsts right there for you.
Well, I think about, there's so many things that the Ironman does that came from our runs. So they would come spend a week with us and see how we did everything. You know, computers were just coming in, so we were all getting into computers. We were new.
The timing of everything.
Yes, we did it by hand before that.
Sure.
And so there are things like at our races we started putting like a Fishes official on somebody's volunteer shirt, or security line, or not security, maybe beer line or registration. And we did that because everybody was always in the beer line. They should have been at the finish line. You know, that's how we knew what category they're in. Well, Ironman has done that ever since. So many different elements that we had in our run, the party atmosphere that they've now created at the Ironman at the finish line. You know, when we first started doing our runs, Runner's World wouldn't even talk about our run, because people were so hardcore runners. When there was the Bloomsday, there was the Beta Breakers, there were a couple mega runs that were all about dressing crazy and having a good time. But Runner's World was pretty serious, you know, about people had runs and here's how this person ran. And then pretty soon they started realizing, wow, people can really do something having these events in city streets. It really was making a difference to get people to come downtown, be in their shorts, even it out. You never knew who was a judge or who was a cab driver. It's pretty special, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, you're known for also being well versed and involved in the sporting field. Specifically, I know you are a golfer, and you do a lot of sports in general, but a lot of golf coverage, a lot of running, a lot of Ironman coverage. How did you get to that point? What was your drive into finding that focus and then making it, you know, something you do?
Well, I was a good athlete way before Title IX, so I was always waiting for my brother to come home or the neighborhood boys, and I would play with them, but I couldn't play in any organized sports.
Oh, wow.
I played in a junior golf program, so I always encourage people. There's so many wonderful junior golf programs throughout Michigan, Midnight Golf, you know, Greater Detroit, First Tee, everything to get their kids to just kind of learn the sport. It's like riding a bike. If you get the fundamentals of it, when you get older, you can do a lot. And when you know a sport, you can integrate it into your work, into your conversation. And you know, what's so wonderful is the way sport has become bigger than business nowadays, because business is only one faction of sport, right? So, it dominates everything. And as I was, you know, I always aspired to play in the LPGA. So I worked on my golf. I was a good golfer in Michigan, but I never was quite good enough to be on the LPGA. But they did allow you to play if you had a 5 handicap or less. So I did, you know, I was a golf bum down in Florida for a while, and, you know, played in LPGA events, and all of us were amateurs. A lot of people went on to play professional golf. I never was quite good enough. And then at a certain point, golf was expensive. That's when I discovered running. So that changed that. But I was always an athlete that worked at it. You know, if I was playing tennis, I would go to the high school and hit against the wall, you know. And even today, I don't play a lot of golf rounds, but I like to go hit balls by myself. You know, you find sport is whether even biking, when you were saying we used to ride our bikes everywhere. Before I met Pooh, I rode my bike everywhere in Detroit. I can remember being down the riverfront on 4th of July and being just me and the fishermen, you know, in those early days, you know, and I'd stop at Ye Old Butcher Shop and get my avocado and cheese and bread and go down there, and I loved it. When I was growing up and we would be driving through the city, it was so vivid to me of being right on the corner by Belle Isle. Remember you used to drive under the tunnel?
Jefferson,
yeah. Yeah, and there was a Pinky's was one of the bar on the corner, and I think it was a White Castle right there. And I used to dream, I want to be the person on the street. I don't want to be in the car, you know, with the windows rolled up and you're driving somewhere.
And right near Honest John.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right near Field.
And, you know, that's in the 60s.
Correct.
And I dreamed of being someone that could just be into the city and be out on the street and talking like people do and, you know, hanging out and everything. That's what I've been doing all my life, you know. It's just that. And so I really espouse that to people. And that's what, even when we had the store, we really had a lot of the store. We sold hot dogs and ice cream. It always evolved. I had been an office worker when all the signs wherever you went said, no food allowed, right? So I was like, hey, I know what that felt like. You would always spend the money you earned to go eat at the Pilot House or somewhere, and I thought, what can we do to make it fit what I would have liked?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So we had hot dogs and ice cream. You could get 2 hot dogs for $1.25, and then we put benches out front, and the city was always saying, oh, no, you can't have those benches. Oh, yeah, forgiveness, right?
ask for that forgiveness.
And then trays, and, you know, guys wouldn't buy an ice cream cone. They'd send their secretaries down to get a cup of ice cream, you know, and then eventually they'd come down and they'd eat that cup of ice cream standing outside watching all the girls walk by, you know, and pretty soon people were comfortable standing in 3-piece suits licking their ice cream cones. So we had to, like, teach people, just like you've done with Slow Roll, you know, teaching people that, you know, it's not a race. Mm-hmm. It's not all about taking a bike ride. I used to always say that. It's more than a bike ride, you know, and that's what we were saying. You know, coming out and being on the sidewalk and having an ice cream cone. And we sold furniture at that time, pretty high-end furniture. And people say, but everybody's sitting there eating, you know. We'd be like, yeah, but they're in the store.
Right.
They're in here. You know, they're coming in all the time. And so it was that whole thing of creating, you know, it was way before Borders had food. Borders kind of picked it up from us. We were really an anomaly. I mean, it was everything against, if you went to any kind of marketing school or how to open a restaurant or how to open a store, it was all against, you know, how you would do it, right?
You did it your way.
It was just naivety. I always tell people, you know, I learned a lot from my father because we learned a lot about retail growing up, about being an entrepreneur and pulling it along behind you and staying focused and being willing to change and adapt. And, you know, we always didn't like it when we were 8, 9 years old and had to go in the store, but I'm forever grateful. You know, he'd say, get out there and talk to that person.
Sure.
And just learning how to interact with people and, you know, take that section over there and straighten it up and fix it up. You know, and that's kind of like we were doing every day at the store. We were just creating. We had a plant store. That was very new for Detroit. People weren't into plants then. So it was, we were making it up as we go along, I assure you. But in a lot of ways, it was a benefit.
But, I mean, but you inspired, I mean, so many people, though, from all of your actions. And I'm sure each step along the way, we all learned with you on expression and community and just getting people to enjoy the city that they reside in. I mean,
you know, we're all weaving what we each do. You know, I'm sitting here, there's Colleen Robar, who I met 4 years ago, you know, through Detroit Homecoming, and now with so many things. And well, I actually met her son, Jackson, at Slow Roll first, you know.
Right.
And as you meet everybody, we all have something to bring to the table. And we're all better for it. You know, it's that mutual mentoring. And, you know, I might say to somebody that's a little younger, you know, one-on-one, it goes a long way. Everything isn't about social media.
Sure.
I still say that to people all the time. You can put it out there, but what really makes things happen is that engagement with people one-on-one.
It's about the relationship.
And then that young person might be teaching me how to do something on my phone. You know, so there's something that we can give to each other. And I've always loved that. When we were doing what we were doing way back then, it wasn't us alone. We were, you know, there was Eleanor Jositis, Father Cunningham, Father Quinn, Hank Aguirre had Mexican, he had been a pitcher with the Detroit Tigers, and these are all people that were aid stations of ours. Chuck Muir had a restaurant over here by 6th Street, and the Mexican Town. We had the mariachi guys would always come down and play in the store. They'd have an aid station now. It wasn't us alone. We brought people together, but it took all those other people. They gave a lot of energy to what we were doing. They made it work, all those other people.
You just became the light that everybody attracted to, and all these people were like, that's I can follow that. Right. I can follow that.
I still call it a big tapestry, and every day we're all weaving the threads of the tapestry, and the colors change, but those threads are always there to grab another one. You never end a relationship. It just kind of changes its nature. And I mean, I'm weaving things I'm doing today with so many people from 40 years ago, and at the same time, people like yourself, Bruno, and Bobby, and Mike, and I mean Tom Page. I mean, they go on at Jackson Robar. I mean, I could go on and all the people that have brought so much to my life. I get really weepy about it because I ride on everybody's energy. Watching what people are doing, and the fact that I get so much warm welcome from everybody. But I'm not the only one that gets it. There's a whole lot of people doing, I always say, so many ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
And that's pretty much the nucleus of what we're doing here, is that we want to spread that word to show that how many people are doing magnificent things that are riding right next to you on a bike.
When you started your podcast, I've listened to every show, and I love it.
We're sorry. We're sorry.
Yeah. No, really, it's wonderful what you're doing, because people don't even realize how hard, I won't say hard to do a podcast, but it takes time, energy, and thought. Mm-hmm. You have in your heart the way you want to talk to your listeners and what you want to share. Mm-hmm. And you're very thoughtful about it. And even Henry, when you were featured, you were the surprise guest a couple of weeks ago. But I learned things about you I didn't know. It's so important.
So did we all.
Yeah, I mean, knowing the backstory about people.
Yeah.
I hope Bruno's a surprise guest one time, because when we know the backstory of people, I realized how much I wasn't listening to my father when we drive by the closed Cliff Bells, and he'd say, I used to play piano in there, And then when I found his notes when he passed away in 1938, played piano, or lived on Kirby, gave piano lessons, and, he went from a piano player to creating Gail and Rice, which has been around for over 75 years now. But he was raising a family, and those stories. My middle name is Trowbridge. Okay, it was R.J. King from Detroit Business Magazine last summer that said, "Do you know that you have a relative that was mayor of Detroit in 1836?" I said, "R.J. had no idea." Really, we all have deep roots, and it's amazing to me when you talk to people in the suburbs, or I'll meet people, they'll say, "Oh, my father grew up in Detroit," and I'll say, "Where? Do you know?" "No, let's call him right now and find out."
Yeah, let's find out.
And they'll call, and the father say, "Well, down in this area, it's something that hasn't really been talked about." But just like I wasn't always paying attention to my dad when he was telling me, but really the threads of how we are all connected to Detroit is absolutely fascinating.
It is. And I mean, I feel like I'm in 3 degrees of separation from anyone from you. I mean, because you draw a crowd wherever you go.
It's like a candle to moss, it literally, like people can't help themselves.
And like you said, the generations of people that I see you speaking with.
Right.
And you're each doing it too. And I tell people all the time this, you may think you're not making a difference, but what I always used to espouse was Detroit is a big enough city, it makes a difference in the world. In a small enough city, an individual can make a difference. And some people have used that as a nice compliment, because it does bring it right down to what Detroit really is. Mm-hmm. And I tell people all the time, you in a few years you get it all the time anyway, because I'm one of those people that tells you, Henry, you make a difference, or Bruno, that you're making a difference. But it's as time passes, when people come back to you, you realize, that you never know who's watching you, or who's inspired by the slightest little thing, inspired by the fact that you went from, doing your podcast with iPod or Detroit. Podcast Detroit. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love those guys, what they started a few years ago. So you were a part of what they were doing, right? And then they help you spin off to that. We're all making a little difference for the next person. We may not realize
just leave it a little bit better than you found it.
Exactly.
Just leave it a little bit better than you found it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listeners, I hope you just enjoyed just a little scratching of the surface of a local legend here in Detroit. Emily, like all of our guests,
okay.
I'm sure you are familiar with our
Three things.
Three things.
So the way it works is every week we pick a different three things that we subject matter that we like about Detroit, like it may be public art or flavors from the city. Today we're going to discuss our favorite sayings or slogans for Detroit because say nice things about Detroit is it's iconic. It's they're inseparable now at this point. But there are others.
Yeah.
So Henry, why don't you lay us down one?
Our statue and spirit of Detroit, being known as the Renaissance City. My favorite slogan is America's greatest comeback city. I think that is just truth in everything that's I've witnessed growing up and living in Detroit on how it ebbs and flows on our times of troubles and our times of celebration. So I think that's just says it all about my feeling about it.
It really does. And I like that it's always coming back. Always coming back. We get knocked down, that's fine, because that's a Detroit thing. We're going to get knocked down, right? We've been there, done that. It happens in our personal lives and it happens in our collective lives as a community, but we always bounce back. We always find a way, and that's encouraging for Detroit. So, here we go. I'm going to go old school. Just because that's how I get down. I'm going to go with something that Archibald McLeish came up with when he worked for the Office of War Information during World War II, and that is the arsenal of democracy. I just think that's a great slogan for the city of Detroit, and it really lets the world know when the shit hits the fan, you can count on Detroiters to do whatever we have to do to get it done. And in much the same way that the spirit of Detroit and the comeback city, we do what we have to do when we have to do it, and that's a great Detroit thing. You may not like what we do in between, but when it's time to get down, Detroiters get down. We do what we do.
So Emily, you created one of the greatest sayings of Detroit. Do you have an alternate favorite?
Yeah, and what I do like is that of all the other ones that are out there, and I always tell everybody, whatever cap you get or shirt or whatever, grab the one that fits your personality because there's so many to choose from.
There is.
And it's always nice if somebody wants to say nice things about Detroit, and I feel like that's an umbrella for all the ones out there. But I would have to say that for a long time, my second favorite has been, and it has a lot to do with slow roll too, is Detroit hustles harder. And the reason why is when I was at my first slow roll, which was at a St. Andrews Hall. I don't know how long ago that was, but I had rented a bike from Wheelhouse, Detroit. And I was in the parking lot, and a lady came up to me and she said, "You're Emily Gail. I used to run in your run."
You're like, I know. I know, it's on my ID.
I live in Milan, Michigan now, but I come down here every week and stuff like that. And she said, "And that's my son over there. He created Detroit Hustles Harder." And it just struck me that night. I remember how much the evolution of people loving the city, and she had that enthusiasm. She was coming down to slow roll from Milan, Michigan. She had lived in the city, worked in the city, was retired or something, but it was that whole message right there. The mother was there, her son, she said, "He's got a place in Eastern Market." And I said, "I love that phrase,
Yeah.
And so I think that has stuck with me. Detroit Hustles Harder because it is. I mean, you have to, there's so many people out there hustling. Nothing's easy.
Right. You earn it.
That's why I say
work.
every small business person out there, no matter how glamorous it looks, they are really hustling hard to make it happen every day. So I love that one.
And those guys in particular, those guys are hustlers.
Yeah, and I like them. I've had a lot of fun.
Up.
I think Corey had his party up there for the Murals in the Market last year.
Yeah,
I like the way they work with others. It's just got a really nice Detroit love feeling to me. Yeah.
Right. There we go. You want to hit her with the 5 quick ones?
So yes.
Okay.
With all of our studio guests, we really enjoy to get a little bit more in depth about you. We've created a little hot seat segment that just about questions that gives ourselves and our listeners a little more insight about it.
Okay.
Question number 1. Describe your first bike or your first favorite bike.
It was from Al Petrie and Sons.
Oh, still
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably in the 50s downriver.
Yep.
And
Rest in peace,
and I
Al.
rode my bike everywhere as a kid. You know, I particularly where my mother would say, "Don't go." You know, like
I think that's what they're for.
you know.
They're for that. Like, I can't be here, but I can just go. I got my bike.
But I mean, I was from, you know, late into the night, and I'm kind of a loner. People don't realize that. I mean, I loner in a nice way. You know, I love going to the movies alone. I love riding my bike alone. I like being in groups too. But I've probably done a lot more in my life alone than I have in big groups. And I just remember so well, you know, riding no-handed, and that it was more of a beach cruiser. But what I do remember about it was Al Petrie and Sons. And then when I've seen them over the last few years and had a chance, you know, now it's the kids or the different
It's
family
his
members.
sons now. Yeah, it's his new generation down there.
But probably 5 generations since then or something, you know. But that's very special. So I remember how much I was on my bike all the time, you know, riding no hands down the middle of the street.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Going where, as I say, my mom told me I shouldn't be going.
What would be your favorite ride? It could be a location, it could be an event.
Nothing. I'm not really a creature of habit in that way, you know. So it'd be like getting on
Your
it.
next ride.
And what am I in the mood for? You know, should I go down to Quindercut, or what haven't I explored that I've been reading about? You know, I haven't gotten on a bike since I've been home on this visit yet, so I'm looking forward to getting on the river walk. But going down to the west side,
Yeah.
you know, and see what's going on, since I've been seeing so much that Todd Scott and everybody are doing with the
greenways.
greenways, and just, you know, exploring that. And I don't know if you know that the ethnic festivals used to be way down there when they were back in the early 70s. So, yeah, so exploring that. I also think, you know, I've gone on some fat rides that I've really loved, and they've taken me to areas. Yeah, the fat kid rides.
Yeah, the gastropub rides.
Right, and so
those are amazing.
you know, I think Jackson is on them, and Robar.
Bobby,
They're always
Melissa.
sweeping because I'm always at the end. You know? So I love that. So wherever they take, you know, they get some Maria and Mike and them, you know, some places that you're like, where was that ice cream place we went to? You know, I get to places that I would
Yeah, they
otherwise
definitely know the
never.
real creep spots.
Yeah.
If you're looking for if you shout out to Fat Kid, if you're looking for
So
a creep
I'm kind
spot.
of a, you know, okay, get on the bike. How much time have I got? I'll just cruise around, and I'm sort of that way rather than a creature of, you know, this is a regular route.
So you've been an athlete all your life, you've ridden your bike all your life, so there's nothing that really brought you back to cycling, but what brings you back to Detroit? Because I know you relocated to Maui for
The Big Island of Hawaii.
Island of Hawaii, excuse me.
And we relocated, but we also relocated at a time that was the lowest point in my life. We had probably $100 left in our pocket, had lost our house, lost our store. It was, you know, it was just I got recruited to go be race director of the Iron Man. I thought it was going to be a temporary thing.
Oh, so you stuck around right from
From then,
that
I always
point.
thought we'd be
Okay.
coming back here, you know, and it just took a lot longer. And I always was, I'm going to weave my life back or move back to Detroit. So what brought me back is what was always in my heart. Just love the city. I love the urban life. I feel very blessed because I've also fallen greatly in love with Hawaii as well. You know, but I always say Detroit's
That's a
every
close second.
well, but you know what? Detroit is every bit as nice as Hawaii in the summertime. I love it here. You know, there's a million stories. It's hot time in the city.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you embrace that, you know, the heat and just the energy that's going on and people on the street. I love talking to people and interacting, and whether you're just, you know, pulling over on your bike and sitting there and someone comes by and you talk to them. So what brings me back is what I always loved was the people. The people and the spirit, and particularly in the street.
Sure.
Where you get that interaction with people. What you've done with Slow Roll. You know, that's the interaction that most people come down and they've never experienced in their life. And you're giving it to them. You know, you're presenting it to them.
Nice little package.
Otherwise, they would never experience it.
Yeah. What would you describe as your favorite Detroit flavor? It could be anything. It could be music. It could be food. It could be parks. It could be anything.
I think just hanging out during the day, even during my work day, to move through the city in a way that you chat. If you're standing, in a valet and you're talking to the valet person, or you go into the coffee shop, how was your day today? And you interact and you get these stories. I went into Brooks Lumber the other day to get some keys made, and got talking with Hector, who made my keys, and told him how I used to be in Brooks Lumber 35 years ago, all the time getting weave light and tools for building out our stores. Nice. So my favorite thing is just interacting, not just go through the motions. And whether it's somebody on the street or somebody that's riding their bike by and you nod to them, the eye contact, the heart contact, that's my favorite flavor. The gratitude for the fact that you get so much Detroit love. Sometimes I'll go home at night and be just like, oh my God, this, how can you, we all have challenges, we've all got our things to deal with every day, but on a daily basis, I get it in Hawaii too, they call it aloha, but I tell everybody there's as much aloha in Detroit as you'd ever want to get.
Okay.
So it's a very special quality that it isn't even a quality, it's the quantity of love and kindness that's really out there. If you're there to receive it.
Sure.
So that's my favorite flavor in Detroit. All the kindness random acts of kindness that come that way.
Okay. And our last question is probably my favorite one is, if you had one wish for Detroit, what would that one wish be?
Everybody just talks a little more with each other, engage in conversation. Don't just walk by each other.
Break down those barriers.
Yeah, as a good friend of Colleen Robar's and mine says, Marcia Music or Marcia Philpott, just say hi. Is that people would realize how far that goes. The ripple effect it can have for someone, whether it's, you going through their supermarket line or something, how was your day or something. So I would say that people would realize what a difference we can make when we engage with people. And it doesn't always have to be words. It can just be a look.
Sure.
Or a nod, but the acknowledgement, that people would realize how powerful that is.
Indeed. Wow, Emily, thank you for taking the time. What are you into now? Let's just briefly scratch on that. What are you into now? What do you want people to know about what's going on with Emily?
Well, I've been
Gail?
doing a lot with Detroit Foundation Hotel, and I feel that's been a very organic. The way it's all evolved of us working together. We started our runs right outside the corner of Detroit. It was the old fire department headquarters. That was a neighborhood. My store was right near the London Chop House. The fire department was there. All the firemen, every morning you'd walk by, and they were a big part of the neighborhood. Sure. Chuck Muir had his pajazz up on the top of.
Okay.
There was the Pontchartrain wine cellars. We were a neighborhood that was all working together. So to be able to be doing so many things that I've been able to do with Detroit Foundation Hotel, and what that is Bob Lambert, who's the general manager, is kind of given me the space to bring all kinds of people that I work with, like the Colleen Robars and the Empty Bowls Detroit. They're now we brought them into the hotel, and they're $1 of every bowl soup apparatus room sells goes to Empty Bowls Detroit. We've had some bowl painting workshops. We've got one coming up July 10th. It's 7 in the evening, and we had 100 women come and paint bowls, and those bowls are used to serve the soup. Rainbow Connection, which is like a Make-A-Wish group, got them involved, and that was through Dave Llewellyn with Channel 7. Dave said, hey, he's the past president, he's an old friend of mine, and he said, can you somehow weave us into what Detroit Foundation Hotel? So now they're adopting a young man who's in the city, has leukemia, or going through treatment. He's going to go to Universal Studios to see the Avengers.
Cool.
But creating all this weaving of groups together that are doing different things, and I feel like the conduit. I'll bring people to them. They've got the venue, and they're so open to the interacting. I mean, and we get people like Colleen that have been wonderful volunteers, Colleen Robar and Robar PR,
Sure.
and the way people have all come together, and we've had urban hikes.
Oh, wow.
Where we take
Cool.
people through the city and involve Girl Trek Detroit. You know that? That's
absolutely.
Angela Lugo Thomas. Now, Angela I knew when she was 4 years old. Her grandmother was in Coleman Young's administration, would bring Angela into the store when she was a little girl.
No kidding.
And we reconnected. We took a walk one day, and I was thinking, wow, we could do something with the hotel, because she's really into the history.
Sure.
So we did urban hikes where we took people by the different plaques around town, took them into the David Whitney building, because the gentleman who refurbished the David Whitney and now the Element His name is David DeRita with Roxbury Group. He stopped me on the street one day when I was doing a piece with Dave Llewellyn with Channel 7. He said, I just have to say hello to Emily. She gave me my first job when I was 15 years old.
Wow.
So all those little things of weaving them. And I'm always trying to, earn a cash flow, create income with what I do. Ink Detroit, Great Lakes Sports, they've now created a collection line of shirts and hats and everything.
In your honor.
Right, and I have an arrangement with them. I'm trying to raise funds so that I can make movie shorts from all the video I have.
Awesome.
And the Detroit Historical Society, I'm doing a lot with them to try to save some of the archives. And so all of it, sometimes it's like...
So you're slowing down is what you're saying.
I think it's like all of us entrepreneurs, right? You just like, we all do a little bit here, a little there, and you just hope at the...
Piece it together.
You make it work.
You make
somehow.
It,
Sometimes it doesn't work as well as other times, but you know what? You learn how to make it work.
Hustling harder.
Yeah, there you go. That's what it's all about.
Wow.
It's been an exciting interview.
I mean...
I feel really energized.
Right, and hopefully for our listeners, this gives you an opportunity to go into more of what Emily's done. We've just scratched the surface, just to pay homage to all that you've done. I mean, it's really incredible.
Yeah, it's like a tribute show.
It is.
I love it. I appreciate it. And I'm Emily T. Gale on all the social media, so people reach out to me, and if you've got old pictures, I get them every day. People send me a picture or a note about the past. So really, I love it when people reach out.
Thank you so much for taking the time, and I know you came a long way.
Well, you guys have been, very special to me. You know that, and
so
Bruno,
we really
from
do.
the way you reached out to me the first time, and Bobby too. I mean, you're like my buddies.
Yes, absolutely.
You're always taking care of me in just some little way.
Anytime
I like
you're
that.
on two wheels in the city,
hit
us up.
It's all good. Thank you so much again for your time.
Appreciate being a part.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Emily T. Gale. This is Detroit ByCycle, all about the love, benefits, art, culture, food, and the wonderful, awesome, legendary people we meet on bikes in Detroit and beyond.